Okay, so now we're going to do part two of the prehistory of our solar system. We touched on this before. The Anunnaki are the ones that seem to be most current uh, in terms of extraterrestrials that visited Earth. So they're viewed as a group of deities, but I don't know if there's so much deities as just extraterrestrials who have civilizations that have been around long enough to have developed some very interesting technology. So they would appear to be godlike. But they appeared to the ancient Sumerians, the Akkadians, the Assyrians, and the Babylonians as deities.
Were they
And
very large giants?
they were bigger, but they weren't significantly bigger now. So in the earlier,
Because there were
ear-
some of those.
yeah, no, they were. There's a lot of things that we're just leaving out because there's so much of it. In the earliest Sumerian writings that we're aware of, the Anunnaki are really the deities in the pantheon of gods, and they descended from the god of heaven, and Ki, the goddess of earth, and their primary function was to decree the fates of humanity. So apparently, as we'll see, what they did was one of the Anunnaki, Enki, was really the keeper of the divine powers, which were called Ma, the gifts of civilization, and he's often shown with a horned crown of divinity. So Enki is the key person here, and he's depicted with two streams of water flowing into each of his shoulders. One is the Tigris, the other the Euphrates. This is on the Ada seal that is found in this epic. So alongside him on the seal, there are two trees combining the male and female aspects of nature, and Enki shown wearing a flounced shirt and a cone-shaped hat, that of a wizard. And an eagle descends from above to land upon his outstretched right arm. And so Enki displays the role as the god of water, life, and replenishment. He's considered the master shaper of the world, the god of wisdom and of all magic. He was characterized as the lord of the Abzu, the freshwater sea or groundwater located within the earth. And in the later Babylonian epic, Enuma Elish, Abzu is the begetter of the gods, who is inert and sleepy, but finds his peace disturbed by the younger gods, so he sets out to destroy them. His grandson, Enki, so Enki is in this line of gods, is chosen to represent the younger gods and puts a spell on Abzu, casting him into a deep sleep, thereby confirming him, confining him deep underground. And Enki subsequently sets up his home in the depths of Abzu and takes on all of the functions of the Abzu, including for his fertilizing powers as Lord of the Water and Lord of the Seamen. So Enki is now chief kahuna. The Anunnaki could have come to the solar system from another planet around another star, and there's suggestions for this, but the reason for thinking that is that they came to Earth to mine gold, and they were readily involved in mining all the planets in the solar system, but in particular, Earth seemed to have the greatest concentration of gold, and it was easiest to get. But after they'd spent generations mining this gold, the Anunnaki decided, why are we killing ourselves? Let's simply create helpers using our genetic engineering to do the mining. And that's how humanity was created. Enki advised that they create a servant of the gods, which was called humankind, out of clay and blood. And against Enki's wish, the gods decide to slay Kingu, and Enki finally consents to use Kingu's blood to make the first human, with whom Enki always has a close relationship. The first of the seven sages or seven wise men, or Abgalu. Ab means water, Gal means great, and Lu means man, that are also known as Adapta. So Enki assembles a team of divinities to help him and creates a host of good and princely fashioners. They're going to create humanity. In this epic, here's just what it says. "O my mother, the creature whose name thou hast uttered, it exists. Bind upon it the will of the gods. Mix the heart of clay that is over the abyss. The good and princely fashioners will thicken the clay. Do thou bring the limbs into existence. Nimma, Yups, Ninhursag, his wife and consort, will work above thee. Nintu, the goddess of birth, will stand by thy fashioning. And, O my mother, decree thou it's the newborn's fate." So this is how they're creating humanity. We have Enki and Enlil and the notion of the flood. So Enlil was apparently the king. Enki was the scientist here who's creating all this stuff. But Enlil, the king of the gods, decided he didn't like humanity. It was making a lot of noise, disturbing his rest. And so he successfully sends drought, famine, and plague to eliminate humanity. But Enki thwarts his half-brother's plans by teaching them how to counter these threats. So each time the population is asked to abandon worship of all gods except the one responsible for the calamity. And this seems to shame them into relenting. The humans, however, proliferate a fourth time, and enraged Enlil convenes a council of deities and gets them to promise not to tell humankind that he plans their total annihilation. This is going to be the flood. So, and Enki does not tell them directly, but he speaks in a secret via a reed wall and instructs them to build a boat in order to rescue his family and other living creatures from the coming deluge. Notice that this is in this epic of Gilgamesh, the Enuma Elish, and it's the same story is found in Genesis with Noah.
I think almost every tradition has a version of it.
Yes, there's hundreds of examples around the earth of a flood taking place in these different cultures. So after the 7-day deluge, no one, how long is a day? No one knows. The flood hero frees a swallow, a raven, and a dove in an effort to find out have the floodwaters receded. They have, so upon landing, a sacrifice is made to the gods. But Enlil is very angry. His will has been thwarted yet again, and Enki is named as the culprit. So Enki explains that Enlil is unfair to punish the guiltless, and the gods institute measures to ensure that humanity does not become too populous in the future. What this probably means is there was some genetic engineering that took place. Who knows?
Well, we seem to be getting pretty populous.
Right. So it's plausible that the ark that carried many to safety from the flood was in fact a massive spaceship, not simply one giant spaceship, but many, and that these arks would have loaded up as many as possible and then moved out into space, and the arks returned at a later time when the Earth was well past the flood. And there are currently over 200 different flood legends around the world. Uh, One of the things about the flood that could have happened was they could have simply taken a large meteor and had it crash into the ice that would be on one of the poles, and that would have generated a huge flood of water that would have done the job. Enki and later Ea were apparently depicted sometimes as a man covered with the skin of a fish, and likewise the name of his temple, Iapsu, the house of the watery deep, points decidedly to his original character as a god of the waters. So Enki, like Gilgamesh, could be like this fish. Gilgamesh was again part human, but also probably part fish. And so nothing's definite is known except this temple was associated with another temple, which was called the Lofty Head House, or or the House, or the Sag, or the Head, and so forth, a name shared with Marduk's temple in Babylon, pointing to a stage tower or ziggurat, as in the temple of Enlil at Nippur, which was known as Kur Hill, Kur. In that incarnation involving ceremonial rites, in which water as a sacred element played a prominent part and formed a feature of his worship. And so there you have it, Enki and Enlil, the Anunnaki. Totally separate from this, we have the Book of Enoch, which is actually part of the Ethiopian church. They view it as one of their holy books. And the vision of Enoch here, the Book of Enoch,
There's felt to preserve the original Jewish tradition.
right,
People may not
right,
realize that if you want to know more about original Judaism, look to the Ethiopian
right.
version.
Yeah, and this shows up very cryptically in Genesis, where Enoch is one of the patriarchs there.
Right.
And the thing that's different is Enoch is the great grandfather of Noah, and Enoch sees a lot of the uh, angels that have visited Earth now, which appear to be these extraterrestrials. They're uh, mating with human women, and the outcome of this is monsters, giant monsters that go ahead and eat everything and pillage everything. And in Genesis, you'll see that Enoch said that we need to get rid of them. We'll create a flood. And Noah went and created this boat so that there would be two of every species that would be saved. But having said that, Enoch himself had his own journey through heaven and his encounter with all kinds of celestial beings. And in particular, there's a book of Watchers in the book of Enoch, which is a story about fallen angels called the Watchers and their union with human women leading to the creation of giants. And then there's a book of Parallels, which is a collection of apocalyptic parables, book of parables, collection of apocalyptic prophecies and teachings. And Enoch saw the giants that had been created through the union of aliens and humans, and told Noah to build the ark. And Enoch negotiated with the different angels or watchers or alien races to cleanse the earth for a restart of humanity. The thing that's different about Enoch from the other patriarchs was the patriarchs all were listed as living for 900 plus years. And it says that Enoch was 360 years old when he was taken away by God. So you can figure out maybe he got in a spaceship and took off. But Enoch went to the heavens to negotiate for what to do with humanity, with each of these entities that had contributed to the genome of humanity. And the alien species all organized into councils or federations, and they needed to reach consensus. And Enoch interacted with all of them and provided a totally independent view. But the advanced technologies of these fallen angels led to all of these issues. In particular, this is clearly some sort of genetic engineering, and this had to be cleansed from the face of the earth. Now, we have the Torah, which apparently came out of the Enuma Elish, which is the original text here. You can get this on Amazon. And it says that Abraham came from Ur in Sumeria or Acadia. And so the cosmology and flood story of Enuma Elish appears in the Torah, this story here. So there's a flood here and a cosmology. And the arks that save everyone could very well be these spaceships. We have as a different guardian of the earth, Sasquatch. Sasquatch is a Bigfoot, or it's an elusive entity There's been a lot of sightings in the U.S. Pacific Northwest, but in other parts of Earth as well. And one possibility is that Sasquatch is actually an alien race that can shift into other dimensions to gain invisibility, which is why they're so hard to find. But they're charged with preserving the Earth and helping humanity to ascend to higher levels. And Sasquatch says that there are many past sentient races on Earth, aquatic or fish or dolphin types, insect types, reptilian, uh, probably avian as a spinoff of reptilian, and now human. So many, many past sentient races on Earth. We're just the latest one in this line. The Hopi said that, well, we started the first dominant race were the fish people, then there were the ant people, the reptile people, the bird people, so we got birds in here, then Sasquatch, and finally humans. And here we have a book that categorizes all these things that you're welcome to go read. Then we have the story of the Anunnaki, but they had these temples where they were doing their mining, and this was in the south of Africa. So satellite photography showed in Namibia there are three major circles, each the size of Los Angeles, suggesting the Anunnaki had gold mines there, and that the effort to mine the gold led them to create a slave race that would do the mining for them, humanity. Uh, we have, as a follow-up on this, there still is an ancient and functioning stone calendar, probably the most important archaeological discovery in the last century. And the site for this in Namibia keeps getting older as more and more research is done, and probably it dates back to 300,000 years ago. Uh, Most conventional accounts of humanity talk about 50,000 years at the most, but this site here has been dated to 300,000 years old. And there's a calendar, Adam's calendar, that's aligned with all four cardinal points, north, south, east, and west, and it's aligned with the summer and winter solstice. So this site is aligned to the north with Great Zimbabwe and the Great Pyramid in Egypt along 31 degrees east latitude. The thing to keep in mind, longitude, the thing to keep in mind is that this alignment, the Great Pyramid is 600 miles away. This is in Namibia here. So this is an incredible, confluence here of how they just covered the earth. There's a spring equinox sunrise on the eastern side of the calendar that's marked by a 3-meter tall monolith carved in the shape of the Egyptian Horus bird. And Horus looks at three monoliths on the outer ring that are aligned with the rise of Orion's belt. So here we have these ties into Sirius and to Orion. And the stone monolith that stood in the calendar circle facing sunrise on the vernal equinox was removed around 1992, but miraculously was returned in pretty much the correct place, but not really. But the African shaman and the mystics all claim that humanity was here and was this is where it was created by these gods. So it's curious that the calendar is referred to in the Sumerian tablets as a place of observing, which was built by Enki, who was the ruler of the ancient gold mining empire called Abzu in southern Africa. But in the same reference, the Sumerian text mentions sites that can be equated with the Great Zimbabwe, the Great Pyramid of Giza. So Enki was also known as the architect and creator of a new species or primitive worker that created or cloned to work as slaves in the gold mines. So South Africa and Zimbabwe are the home to the largest clusters of ancient stone ruins found to date on Earth. And the Adams calendar at the center of it all, the oldest functioning megalithic sun calendar found to date. Since 2007, there's been more than 5 million circular stone structures that have been identified and a small group of independent researchers keeps adding to this. The number might very well be 10 million. And these structures are not standalone stone circles. They're all connected to each other by channels of stone and held in a very large mesh of agricultural terraces that cover entire mountains and resemble a never-ending spider's web. The real mystery here is the original stone structures have no doors or entrances, indicating they were not originally constructed as dwellings for people or animals. And the discovery of these, there's mysterious tools and artifact here that indicate the builders had an advanced knowledge of sematics, or the study of sound, and knew how to use sound as a tool. Apparently, they used that to move all these stones. We don't know how they did that. This calendar that we're talking about is in fact, and you can find this in this book here, is one of the most amazing discoveries here. And as we said before, it's aligned north, south, east, and west correctly, and it ties into the spring equinox. These aren't the only pyramids, though, that some claim that Atlantis built pyramids all around Earth, and perhaps these pyramids are used to generate power or for communications. We don't know. But this map here shows you just some of the places that have been spotted so far where there are pyramids on planet Earth. Interestingly, no one's found anything in Australia or Antarctica or Greenland, but there's a lot of ice in these places. Maybe there are pyramids there. The Giza pyramid complex has three major pyramids. You can see them here. The pyramid of Khafre and the pyramid of Menkaure, and here's the Great Pyramid. And this other pyramid is located in Saqqara, and it's considered to be the oldest complete pyramid complex there. But there are also pyramids in Nubia that are not as well known as those in Egypt, but here they are. They've been covered over by sand. So there's no shortage of pyramids there. And particularly, there's white pyramids here inside China. The problem, they were discovered in World War II when US fighter pilots were flying through here, and they saw these from the air, but they couldn't land. They were busy doing battle. But these white pyramids are just guarded by the Chinese army now, and no one can really access them. So no one really knows what's going on other than they're really there, and so it goes. There's pyramids in Mesoamerica. In Mexico, we have the Pyramid of the Sun and the Pyramid of the Moon, which are located just outside of Mexico City. And they have the Great Pyramid of Cholula, which is a large pyramid complex covering nearly 45 acres. This pyramid is bigger than the Great Pyramid in Giza. In Peru, we have another pyramid, but it's flat-topped, and it was developed before the Incas were there, and so it goes. And so to summarize what's going on here, here's the Earth here, which is the only place of choice. This is still the only, as far as we can tell, habitable planet in the solar system, even though there were others before us that are now destroyed, that we can't live on. Enoch was the one that represented the interests of humanity to the different galactic councils. The law of one is found everywhere in these things, to love yourself and love your neighbor as yourself. And this suggests that everything in the universe is connected to everything else on a higher spiritual level. Every action generates a reaction, positive or negative, and you have to be conscious of your actions and how they affect others and accept others for themselves. This is what has come to be called the law of one, which is collectively what was discovered in all these different things. The entity in Egypt, Ra, was the humble messenger of this law of one, and he used sound to create this. So there's no polarity, there's no right or wrong, there's no disharmony, but there's only identity. All is one, and that one is love or light, light or love, and the infinite creator. There are pyramid texts in Egypt, and these texts are quite detailed. And one of them has 9 principal creators of humankind, and the Ra is self-created as the god of the sun. But there's many children with prophecy that the children will displace the parents, perhaps multiple times, and which is quite similar to what happened in the Enuma Elish, or what happened with, for example, Enki dealing with the Anunnaki. We have the story of Abraham, but apparently Abraham came from Sumeria and was a descendant of Enoch. So Abraham carried this law of one and taught it and spread it and carried the notion of multiple gods that were everywhere. Yahweh was one of these extraterrestrials called an Elohim. He was apparently one that wanted to dominate humanity through fear and power, which is a basic distortion of the law in one. He's into an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, not for love, compassion, forgiveness, and understanding. And this is why Yahweh, by being involved with the Jews, led them to have this hatred for the Hittites, the Canaanites, the Jerokim, and so on. And this is not simply a distortion of the law one, it's a complete rewrite of it to satisfy the ego of Yahweh. The different possibility here is that the Torah was written after the fall of the first Temple of Solomon, and the conquered races that were there uh, were assimilated into Persia, and the Jews decided not to be assimilated. And the way to do this was each of the rabbis that was there, took a piece of what they had and put it all together to become what is now called the Torah. But they chose to write out any role for women, and they made Jews the chosen people out of all the people on earth. So if you're chosen, then you'll stay separate from all the others. You will not be assimilated into Persia. And it was a deliberate action with Yahweh being supreme, but he was probably just one among several on a council of gods. But he was the one that they chose to cite. We're not done though, because we go to India and we find another council of gods with Vishnu, Brahma, and Shiva, and they had many children, gods and goddesses, and they all came out of a primordial ocean out of which the universe was created. And there's God upon God if you go look at the Vedic scriptures and see what's going on. The 3 main ones we described here, but there's many, many more. The Greeks had their own group of gods. You had Uranus, who was supplanted by Kronos. You had Kronos, who was supplanted by Zeus, and Zeus is now the leader in Greek mythology of all kinds of gods and goddesses. And the roots of the Trojan War started with an apple thrown into the midst of the pantheon of gods. The most beautiful goddess gets the apple. This leads to the Trojan War. There you have it. So net, our solar system appears to be a very busy but dangerous crossroads. There's 3 of 4 habitable planets that had oxygen atmospheres and that are no longer habitable. The asteroid belt was the remnants of what was Marduk. Mars had a nuclear war and lost its atmosphere through an asteroid smashing into it, and Venus turned into a thermal hothouse that we can not easily visit. And so that's the reality of what we learned after going into space for almost 70 years. We're going to learn much more going forward in time. Thank you very much for coming, and we appreciate it. Have a good.